We have this idea that automated systems are impartial, that a decision made by a machine is somehow cleaner, more objective than one made by a flawed human being. And it makes sense on the surface, right? Code is supposed to be pure logic. It shouldn't have the messy, emotional prejudices that can cloud our own judgment. But here's the thing. That assumption is completely wrong. And the consequences of getting this wrong are already shaping incredibly important parts of our lives, often in ways we can't even see. Let me give you a real-world example. There is a risk prediction algorithm used in US hospitals, we're talking on a massive scale, affecting over 200 million people. And it was systematically telling doctors that Black patients were healthier than they actually were, compared to white patients with the exact same conditions. Why? Because the algorithm used past healthcare costs as a proxy for health, and historically less money was spent on Black patients. Now, that wasn't a glitch. It wasn't some simple bug in the code. The system was actually working exactly as it was designed to. So that leads to the really crucial question: how does this kind of bias get baked into our technology in the first place? Well, the problem doesn't really start with the machine. It starts with what we decide to feed it. The formal term for this is algorithmic bias, and the key words there are systematic and repeatable. This isn't a random mistake. It's a pattern of unfairness that creates advantages for one group over another, over and over again. And this bias can creep in at pretty much every stage of building an AI. It can happen in the data we choose to collect, the way humans label that data, during the model's training, and even in how it's ultimately used out in the real world. But the single biggest source of the problem is the data itself. See, AI systems learn by looking for patterns in huge amounts of historical information. But that history is, well, it's our history, and it's filled with decades of our own societal and institutional biases. The AI isn't inventing new prejudice, it's just learning ours, and it's learning it very, very efficiently. A few years back, Amazon tried to build an AI tool to help with recruiting. They trained it on 10 years of their own company's hiring data. But because the tech industry has historically hired more men, the AI quickly taught itself that male candidates were just better. It literally learned to penalize resumes that had the word women's on them, like captain of the women's chess club, and it even downgraded graduates from 2 all-women's colleges. So that brings up a really important question. If we know the data is just a flawed mirror of our own past, why are we so quick to believe the answers these systems give us? This is where the issue stops being purely technical and veers into human psychology. It turns out we're basically wired to trust the machine. There's actually a name for it. It's called automation bias. It's our natural tendency to favor suggestions from automated systems. We tend to just accept their answers and ignore other information, even when that other information is staring us right in the face and telling us the machine is wrong. Let's say you're a judge looking at a case file. An algorithm flags a defendant as high risk to reoffend, but the file also shows the person has no prior convictions and a steady job. Automation bias is that little voice in our head that gives more weight to the algorithm's clean, simple label than to the messy, real-world facts. We start to give these systems what you might call algorithmic authority. Because they seem so neutral and data-driven, their conclusions can feel more real, more definitive than human judgment. And when that happens, we start to switch off our own critical thinking. So, when you combine biased data with our blind trust in automation, what you get is a powerful engine for making existing social inequalities even worse. Take a look at this number, 35%. A landmark study found that some commercial facial recognition systems had error rates as high as 35% when trying to identify darker-skinned women. For lighter-skinned men, the error rate was less than 1%. And it goes straight to the heart of our justice system. The COMPAS algorithm, which has been used in U.S. courtrooms to predict who is likely to commit another crime, was found to be twice as likely to falsely flag Black defendants as high risk compared to white defendants. And look, this isn't some abstract theoretical problem. This kind of bias is having a real impact right now in the most critical areas of our lives. We're talking about who gets hired, who gets a loan, what kind of medical care you receive, and even how much you pay for insurance. So, seeing the problem is the first step. The second and much, much harder step is figuring out what on earth to do about it. And there's no single easy solution here. Instead, experts are pushing for a whole range of strategies. Things like being incredibly careful about curating diverse and representative data to begin with, conducting regular audits to check for bias, and this is a big one, always ensuring there's meaningful human oversight, especially when the stakes are high. It also means building more diverse teams to create these systems and improving transparency with things like model cards, which are basically like nutrition labels for algorithms. But the most important thing to get is that there is no simple technical fix for this. You can't just write a better line of code to make bias disappear. Tackling this is a continuous, ongoing process. It requires constant technical vigilance, sure, but it also requires a real commitment to addressing the societal unfairness that these algorithms are reflecting in the first place. Which leaves us with a really big and frankly very difficult question. An algorithm is just a mirror. It reflects the data we show it. If that data comes from an unfair world, can we ever really teach a machine to be fairer than we are?